And welcome back to the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Appreciate you guys joining us on a Friday evening. Hopefully you guys had a great week, but there's been a whole lot of transactions today in the world of baseball. We'll get to those in just a moment. But in case you guys are new to here to the Upside, we cover Major League Baseball, the NBA, the NFL, and the NHL. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and that like button as well, and we'll keep you guys updated on everything that we possibly can as it happens. But thank you, Mark, for joining us. Welcome back, Bush Girl. We'll start right off the top with the Andrew Benintendi contract. 5 years, $75 million to the Chicago White Sox. Biggest contract ever in the White Sox history anyway. The previous one anyway would have been Yasmani Grandal at $73 million. They had other offers that were significantly higher. They did have a big offer out there for Manny Machado in the $200 million range. Zach Wheeler for $100 million. Obviously, they didn't get either of those players. So this stands as the biggest contract in Chicago White Sox baseball history. Now, this is a great addition for them. This allows Eloy Jimenez to go to that DH spot. Benintendi does serve as a significant better defensive player than Jimenez has been, and Benintendi is an above-average player defensively. Now, as far as what this means for the White Sox going forward, I'm a little bit surprised that they were able to go out there and spend $15+ million on a player. They still have other holes on their roster, no doubt, but this to me signals that they are going to spin off some money somewhere. The front office basically was told by the ownership group that they're not really willing to go above where they were last year. Right now, they are right at that limit, and they were told before this that they didn't want to go any higher than where they already were after the Clevenger signing. So I'm expecting them to trade out some payroll in the next couple of weeks. So we'll see who they end up moving. Most likely candidate is going to be somebody from that bullpen that's making some money. My guess is going to be Liam Hendricks because he has the most valuable piece back there that they can affordably get rid of and not change the dynamic of their team. So keep your eyes peeled for what might happen with the White Sox going forward. Other piece of big news. The Minnesota Twins have added at least one big bat so far this offseason, bringing in Joey Gallo on a 1-year, $11 million contract. John Heyman tweets out immediately after that the interest in Max Kepler went off the charts. So maybe Minnesota will turn around and deal Max Kepler now, who's had his name in the trade block for about 2+ years anyway for the Twins. Maybe this is finally the straw that breaks the camel's back. But as far as Joey Gallo, big power, lots of potential there. But obviously the swing and miss is a real thing. The contact, another issue. Is he able to, adjust to those types of things? And with the shift going away, that's going to help him out considerably if he can just make consistent contact. Now, of course, he has a relationship with the front office staff over there with the Minnesota Twins because they came over from the Rangers when he was a prospect with the Texas Rangers. So they're very comfortable with who Joey Gallo is, and that hopefully they can get the best out of him. A 1-year, $11 million deal sounds about right. Think back to the Cody Bellinger contract that he got with the Chicago Cubs anyway. 1 year, $17+ million. It's a very similar type of contract as far as how they're structured anyway, but as far as total value. Cody Bellinger, obviously being a former MVP, got significantly more money. So this seems about right for what Joey Gallo should have gotten on the open market. Now, what happens next for the Minnesota Twins? They've missed out on their top target, bringing back Carlos Correa. They missed out on the top starting pitching target that they had in their sights, Carlos Rodon, as he went to the Yankees. They're said to be interested in bringing in Dansby Swanson, but they're going to have a hefty market. The Dodgers are supposedly in there, depending on what the price ends up or what he ends up going for. Cubs are in there, and of course his former team, the Atlanta Braves. So we'll see, how things go. Another team that was surprisingly thrown into the mix was the in the Dansby Swanson sweepstakes was the Boston Red Sox. They did lose Xander Bogaerts. I told you if they had just saved the money for Yoshida anyway, and just given the money that they might give to Swanson and Yoshida, get Xander Bogaerts, you get a better player, and you don't anger the fan base, plus you have a better chance to bring in Rafael Devers. The Red Sox have supposedly turned their attention to re-signing Rafael Devers. That's where all their attention is right now. They're trying to convince him to stay, and I imagine just having their name floated out there in the Dansby Swanson sweepstakes is part of their case to say, hey, we're not giving up. We want to spend some money. We're willing to invest in the team. But at what level? That's the question I would have if I'm Rafael Devers. I want to see what free agency looks like. So ultimately, if I'm him, I don't sign this extension. But those are kind of the two biggest acquisitions so far today, is the Joey Gallo news and the Andrew Benintendi news. One other bit, the Oakland Athletics did add a nice reliever, Trevor May. They also, the one other news from the Boston Red Sox, they designated Eric Hosmer for assignment. He basically was a free player for them essentially after the trade from the San Diego Padres. And so they kind of create some roster flexibility here. There was plenty of rumors out there that they were going to DFA a number of different first base guys. They ended up DFAing two of them. Frenchie Cordero, I believe, is already on another team. I believe he went to the Baltimore Orioles. Now we see Eric Hosmer going on the free agent market. I imagine he will pass through waivers just fine and elect to become a free agent. And, any team that's out there needing a platoon at first base, maybe you just need a 1 year stopgap filler in there. Maybe the San Francisco Giants, who need an extra bat in that lineup, could turn to Eric Hosmer. And he's been a good bat before, and that lineup certainly needs some pieces, and they're seemingly willing to add some pieces this offseason, as long as it's on a 1 year deal. That way they can add some big pieces next offseason. But those are kind of your highlights so far today as far as the transactions we've seen. Whole bunch of trade rumors are starting to percolate. Texas Rangers, we've told you before, are interested in bringing in a left fielder. They're supposedly interested in bringing in Michael Conforto. I've heard this before from Ken Rosenthal. I think he's mainly just reiterating that the Rangers have at least contacted the Conforto camp and had discussions about what it would take to bring him in. I'm not saying that the Rangers will bring him in. I think they're still focused on bringing in a cost-controlled outfielder, possibly from the Arizona Diamondbacks. Maybe they enter the sweepstakes for Max Kepler. Maybe they go to the Cardinals and ask for O'Neill or something like that. But they're looking for a left fielder, I believe, on the trade market first. If they don't get the deal they're wanting on the trade market, then I think their fallback would be Michael Conforto. But let us know in the comment section what you think of the acquisition so far. Andrew Benintendi, the White Sox, and then Joey Gallo to the Minnesota Twins. Bunch of other deals are starting to be finalized anyway. We already knew Bassett was going to go to the Blue Jays. That deal became official today. The Noah Syndergaard deal, I believe, has also become official. The Giants deal with Sean Manaea is also official. Any rumors on Brantley? Only thing I saw today on Michael Brantley was in the piece from Ken Rosenthal that he still lists Michael Brantley as a fallback option for the Astros. They're supposedly looking at Michael Conforto now that Benintendi is off the board for their left field spot. And if they're unable to bring in Conforto, then it sounds like they will turn their attention back to Michael Brantley. In my opinion, I would rather have Michael Brantley anyway. He's a better hitter, much better. I'll put it this way: he's a better teacher at that position at this point as well. Can kind of teach those younger guys. Say if the Rangers were to bring him into left field, the Astros still have some young pieces that they're trying to get out, or some production out of that outfield. But I think he'd be a great fit in either spot. I would rather have Brantley than Conforto because, again, Conforto's missed a whole year, and you still have a lot of questions about his injury. Brantley missed significant time last year Worry about his injury, especially with his age. But if he can get that bat going for Conforto, maybe he's the better long-term play. But I would rather go with Michael Brantley on a short-term one, maybe a 2-year deal. But I think you could probably get him on a 1-year, $8 to $10 million deal. If you're the Rangers, you can play him at DH and left field and still get very valuable at-bats out of him and that tutelage of teaching those young guys about professional at-bats. Rangers have like 5 or 6 guys they're going to be using quite regularly that they need to get a little bit more production out of. Leody Taveras in center, Adolis Garcia in right, Jonah Heim at catcher, Nathaniel Lowe is their first baseman. He won the Silver Slugger last year. And then, of course, the rookie in Josh Young. If they have a young guy out there platooning with Brantley, say like a Bubba Thompson, he could learn from him as well. And then, of course, at DH, they're supposedly rumored to have Sam Huff on the Major League roster this year. They're not going to be able to play both catchers at one spot every single game, obviously, but maybe every now and again when they have, Huff at DH and Heim behind the plate, they're going to need to have productive at-bats, and Brantley would be a great hitting coach that's already on your roster in a player that can, somebody for them to learn from as a peer. I'm doing pretty good, Bryce. Welcome back. Yankees are in a sticky situation now in left field. A little. I mean, they spent the money that they had. I'm very happy with what they did with their money. They went out and, of course, got Anthony Rizzo to start things off, brought back Aaron Judge, and then brought in one of the top starting pitchers on this year's market in Carlos Rodon. If I'm looking for a contact hitting left fielder, you can go to the bargain basement for that at this point because you got the more important piece in Carlos Rodon. If you had gone out there and signed Andrew Benintendi and said, we'll go ahead and get by with the likes of a Michael Wacha in the rotation, I would have more questions about the Yankees than I do today with them getting Carlos Rodon. I think they could get some back-end rotation help there as well, but left field, I think they're probably going to go bargain shopping there. Unless they decide, of course, spend big on the trade market for a guy like Brian Reynolds. I don't see that happening, at least right now, but I think they could go bargain basement shopping right now for left field. As I mentioned, there's a lot of trade rumors starting up anyway. The Royals are supposedly willing to trade Michael Taylor, possibly more of a fill-in center fielder for other teams that are out there. The Dodgers are said to be very interested in bringing in a center fielder. They've talked about bringing in Varsho. They've talked about bringing in Brian Reynolds. They've talked about any type of center fielder that's out there on the market right now, and I wonder which one they'll end up going with. We'll see. They're supposedly interested in Jared Kelenic as well. But Dodgers are willing to make some moves to fill that spot. But remember, they're trying to stay underneath that CBT tax threshold, and so they're not going to spend big at that spot. So we'll see how they choose to attack free agency the rest of the way. Hearing Yankees are in on Swanson, but I don't know how accurate. I've heard some rumblings that they're at least, kicking the tires on the idea, just checking in, but that's more of due diligence from what I'm understanding. If they were seriously interested in bringing in Dansby Swanson, I think we would have seen something a lot more concrete than what we've already seen out there. We haven't really seen any of the big headlines like, hey, they've had a meeting with him, or hey, they're bringing him into New York to discuss things one-on-one. And of course, he's dealing with his wedding that he just had as well, and he's got bigger fish to fry right now in his personal life. But I just don't see the Yankees going out that far right now. I think they want to, offer or operate with restraint, still add to the left field spot, unclog that middle infield spot as well, bring in some bullpen help, and then add to the back end of that rotation. But I think the last thing they're really worried about right now is making another big dip into free agency, especially when the market is really high right now for Dansby Swanson. I think the Cubs are a legitimate threat to signing him. The Twins, the Braves. And even the Dodgers at this point, even though I don't think they'll spend the money to bring him in, sounds like they're hoping the market drops to around $20 million in order to bring Dansby Swanson in. If it does, the Braves are going to be right there, the Dodgers are going to be right there. Pretty much any team with about $20 million in payroll to spare would love to bring in Dansby Swanson as a glove-first type player whose bat is certainly improving. But again, in a contract year, everybody's bat improves. So how much can you really rely on that bat? That's what I would have a question about for Dansby Swanson long term. But the Yankees, I think, are very happy with their middle infield situation as far as their plan going forward. I don't think they're happy with what it looks like today, but I think they're very happy with what it looks like in a year, in 2 years from now, especially if Volpe hits, if Peraza hits, or one of their younger guys hit at that shortstop spot. They got cost control at a very premium position, especially in New York when they have so much money already spent in that lineup. You're waiting for a big move that they said they were going to do. I think this weekend will be very active on the trade market. I agree. But as I mentioned, we're going to be ending our dailies. We're going to be switching to more of a weekly format. We will be live for you guys Monday evening. So if we do see some activity on the trade market, we will try to bring that information to you live in kind of an emergency type way if it's something big. But on Monday we'll go over all the different headlines that have happened over the weekend, and then we'll go with that the rest of the off season, at least until pitchers and catchers report, and then we should get back into some regular coverage with baseball. But we're going to be trying to give you some more in-depth videos, some better breakdown videos, if you will, as far as the transactions that happen. We're also going to be trying to get back into football a little bit. We focused quite a bit on baseball ever since the end of the offseason. A lot of transactions have happened. Immediately right after the World Series, we saw Edwin Diaz sign that 5-year, $102 million contract. Really kicked off the offseason for Major League Baseball, and it never really stopped until, I'm imagining, probably in the next day or two. The top free agents are pretty much all scooped up outside of maybe Nate Eovaldi right now, Michael Conforto, Dansby Swanson. Outside of that, there's really not much left out there. If the Yankees get Kepler, I'm going to be mad. He had 666 OPS. Well, Kepler's kind of a mercurial talent for me. If he's got a lot of potential, people see a lot of ability in that bat. They see his ability in the field as well, but he's never really lived up to it, especially over the last couple of years. Now, could that change wherever he ends up going as a change of scenery? Absolutely. He's had little ticky-tack, little injuries that have nagged him over the past couple of years. Pulled hamstring there, pulled groin there, kept out for a day of rest here or there, platooned at some points to try to get their younger guys into the lineup like Kirilov and Larnach. I can't remember his name, but they've platooned him a little bit to get those guys some regular at-bats. Defensive versatility. They had a defense-first type player as well. Trying to remember his name, Guillermo something. I can't remember his name, but he would be pulled late in games for those type of players as well. And he hasn't had the smoothest running time anyway with the Twins. Not saying he's going to have that wherever he ends up going. So if your Yankees get him, I'm not saying he's going to get 600 at bats with the Yankees. I'm saying wherever he goes, a change of scenery might unlock a little bit more of that potential than what's already come out from the Minnesota Twins. Welcome in, Clarence. Doing pretty well anyway on a Friday evening. Has anybody picked up Aroldis Chapman yet? No. I'm wondering where he's ultimately going to end up going. I think a team that's looking for immediate help in that back end of their bullpen that's willing to take a risk on a guy would be something I would pay attention to. He had off-the-field issues, especially with his manager last year with Aaron Boone, was left off the postseason roster, had up-and-down performances in the regular season as well, and lost his closing role. Maybe he goes somewhere and has a heavily incentive-laden contract. That's probably the best thing right now for his career to protect both the team and the player long term. But Chapman has not signed yet. I would rather go for Zach Britton, in my opinion, rather than Aroldis Chapman, even if I don't get a full year out of Zach Britton. Did Oakland spend $7 million on a reliever today? They did. Oakland has always packed a very heavy bullpen. When they go through their younger phases of their development anyway, they like to pack that bullpen with 8-9 pitchers back there in that bullpen to really shorten the game for their young starters. They're a very young team, and they're going to have some young starters going this year, and they're going to have a lot of games where their starter doesn't get through the fifth inning. That's why they're going to carry a big bullpen this year. They've done it in the past 3-4 years ago, and pretty much every 3 or 4 years they really pack out that bullpen. So that's why they brought in Tyler May, $7 million, 1-year deal anyway. But you're predicting Miami for Aroldis Chapman. Makes some sense. They had a lot of people leave out of that bullpen. They're going to need somebody to lock down games for them. Might be a good bet. Ethan, you think the Rangers are about to make a blockbuster trade? You think so? I mean, if they got Fernando Tatis Jr., that would be fantastic from a Rangers perspective. Young, cost control. You already know the cost of Fernando Tatis, but I haven't seen anything to connect the Rangers to Fernando Tatis Jr. I mean, he could play left field for the Padres. I suppose he could play left field for the Rangers. But if you have that information, Ethan, let us know where you're seeing that from. I'd be very curious to see what it would be. Now that you mentioned it, I'm kind of wondering what it would actually be like. Let me pop this screen up for you guys. Give me just a moment. In case you guys are wondering, this is baseballtradevalues.com. It's a great site for you guys to test out whether or not your trades make sense, if something is, could hold water or not. So Ethan brings up the Fernando Tatis Jr. piece. Just so you guys know, we saw some headlines coming anyway from the New York media anyway that they were interested in bringing in Fernando Tatis Jr. We had mentioned this offseason there was a possibility if you called the Padres, they would at least listen on the possibility of bringing in or making a trade for Fernando Tatis Jr. I have yet to see anything to substantiate those rumors. John Heyman basically saying it's total BS, and I happen to agree with him. Nothing on the market like that has carried any weight yet, and if something like that were to be out there, I mean, that would be big headline news, and there's been no fire to any of the smoke that's out there, so kind of keep your wits about you. We haven't exactly seen anything on that front. What will Swanson's contract be like? I'm predicting probably 6 years, maybe 7, 175. Think of the Marcus Semien contract as kind of a template, maybe a little bit less than that because his bat is significantly less than what Semien's had been with the Toronto Blue Jays before. And he does have a better glove anyway at shortstop, play a more premium position, but I'm expecting probably in that 7, maybe 6 years, 150, or 6 years, 150, somewhere in there on the high end. I think his contract will probably end up as AAV around $22 to $25 million. Any news on McCann? No, the McCann news is basically that they're interested in trading Carrasco and McCann to kind of save some money. But when you're Steve Cohen, I mean, what's another $20 million to you at this point? I mean, you're spending almost $400 million in payroll. I understand you're trying to save a little bit of cash, but I don't see them trading away prospects to save that tiny little bit of money for Steve Cohen. I thought Andrew Benintendi wanted to play for a small market. Chicago is not a small market. Yeah, but it's not like the White Sox are a front-line, front-page team, something like that. I think the bright lights in New York might have been a little bit too much for him. But Chicago isn't exactly a small city, like you say. But 5 years, $75 million, great contract for him. I don't think another team would have been willing to go 5 years for him. That's ultimately what he was looking for this offseason, and he got it. And good job by the White Sox improving their outfield, both from a defensive standpoint and adding a good contact hitter in front of their power hitters. They should have a much better season this coming season as long as they can stay healthy. If the injury bug gets them, we're looking at another competitive division with the Guardians, Twins, and White Sox all right there at the top. But as we were saying here, let's kind of check out this trade possibility that Ethan had mentioned. He thinks the Rangers are about to make a blockbuster trade for Fernando Tatis Jr. Just keep in mind, we haven't seen anything to that yet. But let's just see what could happen there. First, we want to get our two teams, Rangers and Padres. Now, there is some familiarity, so the Padres front office is very familiar with the Rangers prospects that they have anyway, with A.J. Preller coming over from the Rangers. Of course, the regime is a little bit different. No John Daniels there in Texas anymore, so it's not going to be the same old there. So maybe that's, might spur a trade, talking with somebody new anyway on the other side. Let's start with the Fernando Tatis Jr. piece of this so you guys can see what his value is. His value, 112. Right off the top, I'm going to tell you right now the Rangers don't have the ability to make this type of trade. But we're going to see what it would actually end up costing. Yankees offered 4 and 64. Yep, makes sense. That's why he ended up taking 5 at 75. All right off the top, they're not going to trade Young. They're not going to trade Carter. I don't think they're going to trade Leiter either or Owen White. So those are your top pieces right there. Padres are looking for major league level talent to have in their lineup and looking for outfielders as well. So maybe they could trade Adolis Garcia, who's 29 years old, is a little bit older, has, I believe, 4 years left to control. Cost control for the Padres is very important for them after they spent so much money over the past few off seasons and still have to re-sign Juan Soto, and Manny Machado is expected to opt out at the end of the season. They need to save some money for him as well. So let's go ahead and throw Adolis Garcia in. This does solve one problem, but creates another one for the Rangers. Still not sure they're going to even do this if they had the pieces, but let's just start there because we have to include something of value. Let's go ahead and throw Dane Dunning in there. Gives them a rotation piece since they didn't bring in Bassett or Senga. That gets you 2 pieces there. Let's go ahead and throw in Duran. He's been mentioned as an available piece so far this offseason. Smith is another one. We'll go ahead and throw him in there. And just right off the top, what do you see? Total value for the Rangers of what they're giving up, 67.9. For the Padres, they're giving up 112.5. Again, not even close. I don't see this happening. The Rangers are getting way too much value here, and there's just no reason for the Padres to accept that type of a deal. Now, if the Rangers were willing to include Evan Carter or Jack Leiter, something like that, then they could get the ball really rolling. But the Rangers are not willing to trade either one of those pieces. I think they're even more untouchable than any player on their major league roster right now. But if they did get him as a left fielder, I would be jumping up and down in this chair. I don't care how they would have gotten him. It would have been a great deal. But it was probably going to cost those top couple of prospects on the Rangers, and they're not willing to do that as of yet. They spent all this time going through these tough years. They don't want to mortgage that future that they worked so long and hard to make it so bright. Now they've got major league pieces that they signed in free agency. They're not just going to give away their farm system just to get a left fielder. That is the one piece on their list that they need to go for. But again, this is not happening. Bro, Tatis is not for trade. Sorry. Well, I'm not saying he is going to be traded. I'm saying that if you made the right offer to the Padres would hear you out. Even then, I'm not saying they would agree to it. But for example, if you made a real legitimate offer for Juan Soto, I don't even think they listen to your pieces in the deal. I think they immediately shut you down and say no. Whereas with Tatis, I think they'd at least listen. That's what we were just talking about just a moment ago. False rumors by the Yankees media, not necessarily by the Yankees themselves, but as we mentioned this offseason, that the Yankees, if they had missed out on Aaron Judge, would need a piece like Tatis Jr., but we never saw them really be connected to Fernando Tatis Jr. But again, A.J. Preller, I don't think would hang up at all on Fernando Tatis Jr. as long as you gave him a legitimate, serious offer. And we already documented multiple times why that would be. I'm still not saying he would trade him. I'm just saying he would be more willing to listen than he would for a guy like Juan Soto. Padres are not going to trade a natural or non-regular, especially. Enough of the bogus made-up Tatis trade rumors. Well, I'm not saying these rumors are legitimate. I'm just saying that he is more available than Juan Soto, which Juan Soto is, by the way, not available at all. And I'm not saying Tatis Jr. is available at all either. I'm just saying Juan Soto is even more untouchable on that roster, and as a star, you'd expect that to be the case. Whereas with Tatis Jr., with all the offseason issues, with all the injury issues, the knuckleheadedness, the PED suspension, the multiple injuries to his arm, the inavailability, the multiple motorcycle crashes and not seeking medical treatment, showing up to training camp with those same injuries after not seeking medical treatment, missing 3 months of the season. A.J. Preller, you could tell at the press conference when the PED suspension was announced that he basically had enough. Was not just disappointed in Fernando Tatis Jr., but was beside himself with frustration at that situation. And now he's had time to let things cool down and let cooler heads prevail. And that's why I still think Fernando Tatis Jr. is very much a part of the San Diego Padres' future. I'm not saying at all that he's available. I'm just saying he's slightly more available than, say, Juan Soto would be. You believe the Rangers would trade Carter and Rocker? You believe? Okay. First and foremost, as far as Kumar Rocker goes, Kip Fagg, the Rangers director of scouting anyway, and Chris Young pounded their fist on the table for this guy all off-season long when they were building up to the draft. The Athletic documented that they are not trading their pet project that they really wanted in the Jack Leiter draft. Were unable to get because the Mets were unable to sign him. He re-entered that draft the next year, and they basically opened up their book and said, "Where do I sign?" That's how bad they wanted to bring in Kumar Rocker. The advantage of having that high-end pick, they were able to save some money and get the best high school arm in the draft in Brock Porter, who I also believe is unavailable in a trade. As far as Evan Carter anyway, his value has raised so much in the last 6 months. There's no way they're going to stop that star from ascending. They want to see what they really have. They have holes in that outfield. Don't forget that. So they're not going to trade away their most promising outfield prospect right now, even if they were to bring in, a stopgap option. I don't think Fernando Tatis Jr. is any real rumor going to Texas. I think that's, pipe dream stuff. I just don't think the Rangers have the ability to do it. But they are looking for a left fielder at some level, and it sounds like they're willing to trade for it. I just don't think Fernando Tatis Jr. is the right piece because it's going to cost way too much. Padres owner is from a hedge fund. He has the bread to sign top market players. Sure, that's why we've seen him, go out there and bring in Hosmer to get the ball rolling. Machado, Make the deal for Tatis Jr., getting him locked up. Make the trade for Juan Soto. Bring in Xander Bogaerts. Eat money on the Hosmer contract. Spend big money on Will Myers for a couple years. He has money. Not saying he doesn't. You think Manny will stay with the Padres? I think the Padres will pay him as well. I just think that it's not necessarily a 100% guarantee he comes back to the Padres, but I'd say it's probably about 90-95% right now that Manny Machado ends up re-signing back with the San Diego Padres. Got to give something to get something, sure, but I'm not giving that much, and I wouldn't, like if I'm the Padres, I don't trade Tatis Jr. for that either. Even if you did include Carter and Leiter. They'd be two premium pieces, but Tatis Jr. is still way too valuable. I'd need even more than that. Josh Donaldson and Aaron Hicks are both garbage. I think the Yankees try to move them. It just didn't happen so far anyway. By the way, love your show. Thank you, Clarence. Appreciate that. I do think the Yankees, if they could have it all over in a perfect world, they would amnesty the contract of Hicks, Stanton, Donaldson, and a few others out there, DJ LeMahieu as well. But this is the real world. They can't amnesty those. They're going to have to eat them, and I don't think they're going to be able to spin them off unless they trade significant prospects to be able to get it done. San Diego fans would be pissed if Junior gets traded. I agree. Yankees would have to include prospects to get rid of Donaldson or Hicks. Absolutely. Tatis brings fans to the field. Jersey sales, sure, but you've got Juan Soto for that now. You've got Manny Machado for that as long as you re-sign him. Now you've got Xander Bogaerts to build that team around as well. It's not just Tatis Jr. or bust for the Padres anymore. Rangers owner has just as much money. It certainly seems that way. It seems like his coffers are not nearly empty. He's willing to spend, and spend he has. Apparently, Ray Davis, the Rangers owner, has been in a lot of these meetings with these top-flight free agents out there, kind of laying down the vision for what they want to do in Texas, and that's been enough to convince major starting pitchers to come to the Rangers. And that's certainly helped as far as last year, bringing in Corey Seager and Marcus Semien. The approach is working, so we'll see if they end up spending even more money this offseason or saving a little bit and spending even more next offseason. Just remember, when a player gets caught for steroids, it's always the next team that benefits. Sure, but as much as I would love it to be the Rangers, I just don't think Tatis Jr. is going to be traded. I think there's the ability for him to be more available than Soto, absolutely. And I think if you made a Juan Soto level package, I think Preller would listen to you. But whereas on Juan Soto, I think even if you came back with a trade offer exactly like what they gave up, I don't think they listen on Juan Soto, period. Whereas Tatis Jr., I think he'd at least hear you out if you came with the correct approach and the correct offer. Tatis is an idiot and can't stay on the field. Contract is looking bad. Don't want him on the Rangers. Well, that contract isn't looking bad long term because if the PED thing, clears itself up, he's still a very productive player. Now, sure, there's going to be some out there. I know some of you in this chat have actually mentioned this before that because of the PEDs, you're not sure if it's PEDs that caused Tatis Jr. to be that up or to be that level of productive, or if it's just Tatis Jr. himself. In either case, I think the majority of us can agree Tatis Jr. is a good baseball player. Do we think he's a $300 million baseball player right now without the PEDs as opposed to with? That's a good question, and I still think he's going to be worth it long term, even without PEDs or whatever might have been helping him. And he does bring a lot of jersey sales and ticket sales and that kind of a thing, but teams that are looking to trade for him, I don't think are looking for that. I think they're looking for production. But as I mentioned, I don't think he's moving. So for those of you who are Padres fans, slow your roll. Relax. It's not an insult for them to say, hey, he's slightly more available than, say, a Juan Soto, because neither one of them is really available anyway. I just think that when you have a star player, usually it's an automatic no, hang up the phone, don't talk to him, period, whenever you have a star player on your roster. That's what I think they do with Manny Machado. That's what I think they do with Juan Soto. Tatis Jr., though, is in a different situation. He has that PED situation, the injuries, the off-the-field concerns, the not seeking medical treatment after how many countless number of motorcycle accidents he got in the offseason, coming into spring training, injured still, and after not seeking that medical care. Weak arm issues 1 year, being flexed to the outfield because they brought in Xander Bogaerts. There's a lot more to the Fernando Tatis thing than Juan Soto, for instance. And so while I think there's no chance you even talk about Juan Soto, I think if you come with a fantastic blow-you-out-of-the-water type proposal for Fernando Tatis Jr., I think Preller would at least listen and hear what you got to say. Yeah, he's going to have to learn how to be a superstar. I agree. Thank you, Bryce. Appreciate that. That's a good way to put it. I don't know. Maybe I'm muddling my words, but that's a good way to put things there, Bryce. He led the NL in home runs in 21 with missing 32 games. Way too good to trade right now. Yes, but he's missed a whole year. Has had multiple injuries. Who knows what exactly he's going to look like when he comes back? I don't think he's going to the type of injury risk as say Michael Conforto is, but he's still a very productive player. Cobra, you're making no sense now. You're saying there's no way they trade him, and then the next sentence you're saying he's glass. That's an argument for them to make him more available. Value is maybe 80 right now, not 112 with steroids, according to that trade scale. Maybe 85. Plus, the motorcycle and him and Machado don't get along. I don't know how much truth there is to that with him and Machado not getting along. I think Machado realizes what it takes to win. All those years working with Buck Showalter with the Baltimore Orioles, I'm sure instilled him with a sense of what to look for, how to perform as a winner, those types of things. Whereas Manny Machado had those eccentricities as a young player as well. Fernando Tatis Jr. is going through those same eccentricities right now, and I think he could learn from somebody like that. Love Machado to be on the Rangers and move Young to left field. Again, I still don't think the Rangers are going to be able to make the trade for anybody like that. But if you're saying free agency, there are a couple of good third basemen on the market next year with Devers and Machado. Would it surprise me if they went after a third baseman? Absolutely not. Especially if they don't make a big signing or make a big trade for a left fielder this offseason. But I just think Machado is going to stay with the San Diego Padres. Just saying for the other teams that want him. Okay. So you're trying to cool them off on their pursuit. Okay. You want to keep him. I got you, Cobra. All right, let's clear this trade off here and actually get to a trade that could happen. Let's go ahead and put the Rangers up here once again. We mentioned that the Rangers are looking for a left fielder. I think their still preferred destination to go for a trade here is going to be the Arizona Diamondbacks. They just have the left fielders I think that they could use, and we'll see which way they end up going. But I think there's some real talent out here, depending on which way they decide to go. For me, the easiest piece here for the Rangers to acquire would be a guy like McCarthy. He isn't one of their top-level pieces in the outfield. It doesn't cost a whole lot to bring him in. So you're talking about maybe a piece as far as like Dane Dunning, an extra piece for that rotation, and maybe a prospect or two at the back end of the deal. Or if you decide to go full prospects, getting them middle infield ready prospects at the major league level is what they're looking for. They're also looking for a right-handed power bat. Ezekiel Duran fits that fits that formula exactly for what the Diamondbacks are looking for. And so I think there's a natural trade partner here with the Diamondbacks and the Rangers. So kind of keep your eyes peeled here. I still think that the Rangers could do a little bit better in a trade if they, there's other options out there that could fill their left field hole a little bit better. You think the Rangers can have Profar back? I'll take him. If you're giving him to us, I'll take him. Multi-utility player who can play, all over the diamond. Give me Jurickson Profar back, especially now that he's had time to get acclimated to the game. Isn't exactly viewed as the top overall prospect in the game anymore. Doesn't have that monkey on his back. Can go back to Texas where he's comfortable. Give me Jurickson Profar all day long. I think the Padres absolutely should bring him back. The multi-positional flexibility that he brings also gives you insurance in case Tatis Jr. goes down again due to injury. He can play literally any outfield spot, any infield position as well. He is a great piece and should be worth at least $8 to $10 million on the market, maybe upwards of 12. What do you think, Justin Turner to the Padres? Not a fit. You could put him at DH, I suppose, but I think he's going to go back to the Dodgers. Profar is a great ball player. I agree, Bryce. Michael Brantley or Nelson Cruz to DH for Texas. Now you're playing with my heartstrings here. Nelson Cruz, in case you guys are wondering, is one of my favorite players of all time for the Texas Rangers. Boomstick is his nickname. They still sell the Boomstick at the Rangers ballpark. 3-foot long hot dog anyway. I really like the player. I was disappointed when we let him go, that we didn't re-sign him. I was even more disappointed that he played for the Mariners. And every single time his name pops up in free agency, the Rangers just never seem to get right back in there, even though they have a hole at DH and could use an outfielder. Do I think Nelson Cruz is still an outfielder? Absolutely not. Do I think you could still get some production out of him? Sure. but I think Mitch Garver on this roster right now fills the spot on the Rangers roster where Nelson Cruz could help you. Michael Brantley, on the other hand, is a different animal. He could play both left field and DH for you. Professional hitter, left-handed hitter, and I think he's the better player out of the two at this point. And I think he would have been fantastic for the Rangers. As far as Cruz piece, I think the Rangers coaching staff should have told Nelson Cruz to play further back in that World Series game. If they do, I think the Rangers win that World Series right there. He makes the catch, and the Rangers are no longer one of those teams without a World Series title if he just plays 5 feet further back. Padres are in the division with the Dodgers. They are going to need top firepower to try to win. The West, Manny, Juan, and Tatis are going to stay for a while. I'm still right there with you, buddy. I'm not saying they move any of them. I'm just saying Manny and Juan are in one category, while Tatis Jr. is in, I'll put it this way. If you have between 1 and a million as far as how likely, the player is to be traded, million being the absolute definite going to happen, absolutely get him out of town, must trade him no matter what. I don't care if I have to pay every single penny on his contract. I'm getting him out. I'll eat your bad contract in return as well. Just get him out of town, million. Tatis Jr. is nowhere near that. We're talking about Juan Soto being a 1, as in no possibility at all of Juan Soto being traded, period. I'm saying Fernando Tatis Jr. should be a 1 based on how they viewed him, how they set him up on that team, how important he is to that team, yet because of all the issues he has, he's not a 1. He's probably a 2. But that's nowhere near saying he's going to be traded on the scale of 1 to a million. Okay? That's just where I'm saying is Juan Soto is a 1, absolutely unlikely to be traded. Tatis Jr. would be around a 2. And whereas Eric Hosmer last year was an absolute million, absolutely get him out of town, I don't want him on my roster, I'll give you whatever you want to just take him off my hands, please. That's where Eric Hosmer was. I'm not saying Tatis Jr. is anywhere near that. I'm just saying he's not at the same level as far as viewed in that organization as, say, a Juan Soto, and rightfully so. He hasn't earned it. Profar has good defense, but he can't really hit. Yes, he can. He's a switch hitter. He hits, 230, 240? And with the shift going away, I expect that number to rise a little bit. I'm not sure if he hit 230 or 240 last year. I want to say he hits usually around that, though. But I can't remember off the top of my head. I know, Clay, I know you're watching. But he's still a good hitter in my eyes. Cruz would be cheap, I agree. I'd trade Soto for prospects to build our farm system back up. Absolutely wrong move there. Juan Soto is your future. So trade Soto and Tatis. No, you're wrong as a Padres fan. I agree. You're saying Soto could be... okay. Come on, Cobra. You're not going to trade for Soto. Trade him away. Sign him again in 2 years. Not going to happen. Hosmer going back to Royals? Possibly. I think he would be a great fit on the San Francisco Giants, though. Mentioned that at the top anyway. He has been DFA'd by the Red Sox. I think the Giants could really use a first baseman of his caliber. I think maybe the Cardinals could use a platoon mate for Paul Goldschmidt there, possibly as a DH as well. And so I think Hosmer would be a natural fit in the NL again. All right, so we talked a little bit about the Rangers solving their issues with the left field via trade. Welcome in, Sub-Zero. Appreciate you coming back and joining us tonight. Was the next Yankees move now? I think they're still looking for rotation upgrades and move for a left fielder and bullpen. Those are kind of their next options. Now that Benintendi is off the market, they were supposedly in there at 4 years, $64 million. I imagine they're going to go kind of bargain basement shopping for a left fielder at this point, and so I think their attention shifts to like the number 4 or 5 spot in their rotation, in addition to that bullpen, whether it be via the trade market or free agency. I think that's the next stop for Yankees fans. You think it's happened with Chapman, so don't say never. Not sure what you're saying there, Tim. So why do you want to trade him when you just traded him? Okay, you're talking to Cobra there. Junior needs to grow up and play for the team, not himself. We were all his age at one time, like any of us. Didn't get an attitude at that age. Welcome in, Anthony. Who's getting Michael Conforto? Good question. I'm hoping it's not the Rangers. I just have a bad feeling about the injuries that he's had that have really siphoned away a lot of his power. As a Rangers fan, I don't want Michael Conforto. Watch the second they, right after I say that, they'll sign him. I'll be like, oh yeah, they got him. They solved their left field hole. Blah 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 blah. I would rather have gone in a number of different directions. For instance, if you gave me a choice between Michael Conforto and Jurickson Profar, Michael Conforto is probably going to be a 1 or 2 year type deal, probably in the neighborhood of $8 to $25 million, depending on what the guarantee is actually in that deal. I would rather go with Jurickson Profar for 8 to 10 million per year and solve my left field hole that way. Not saying I prefer either of those options, because I still would rather go the trade route if I'm the Rangers. But Michael Conforto, Yankees are a possibility. The Astros, though, are more likely, along with the Mariners. Welcome in, Peter. Welcome back, Anthony. With Carlos Rodon signing, does the trade market pick up for pitchers like Bieber and Lopez? Absolutely. Oh, you're talking about the Chapman trade with the Cubs. Okay. Yeah, it's not going to work quite like that with the Juan Soto deal, after all. And then Yu Darvish, he did almost come back to Texas. The Rangers, though, were not willing to pay him the money that he ultimately got from the Cubs. Here in the Conforto market, 1 year, 14 to 15 million. Again, I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole. I just don't think he's going to be able to hit for any power. I don't think he's going to be able to stay healthy. Too many injury concerns for me with Michael Conforto. Would I take an incentive-laden deal, say a 1 year, $6 million guarantee with incentives that could take it to that level? Sure, but he's not going to sign that. Nate Eovaldi would be a great signing for San Diego. Yes, that'd be a good signing for them. They need a number 4 type starter. Eovaldi's more of a 2/3, depending on the day. You want Cueto and Eovaldi. Sounds like Cueto is going to go back to the Cincinnati Reds. For those of you who might wonder, hey, that sounds familiar. Cueto and the Reds. That's where he pitched the majority of his career. Thank you, Bryce. 244, 3.1 WAR. Give me some Jurickson Profar. I'd rather have him than Michael Conforto. And just like you mentioned there, Tim, I'd really like that positional flexibility. I can play him in left. I can play him in right. I can play him at third base when Josh Young needs a day off to kind of get his mind right if he starts to struggle and slump, as rookies tend to do sometimes. Say Corey Seager gets injured, you can plug him in at short even though you have Marcus Semien. If Semien gets hurt, you can plug him in there. You can plug him in at first base if Nathaniel Lowe needs a day off. The only place you can't really play Profar is catcher. You can even play him in center if you absolutely had to, but for me, I would rather have Jurickson Profar than pretty much any other free agent outfielder besides Michael Brantley. He is a good leadoff hitter as well. Rangers don't really have a natural leadoff hitter on their roster right now. With the Yankees out in terms of left fielder, trading for a top or middle of the rotation starter, who becomes the favorite in terms of trading for Pablo Lopez, in your opinion? Good question. I think the market for him comes down to, I believe the Toronto Blue Jays would still be interested in bringing him in as the number 5 starter in their rotation. Are they willing to give up top-level pieces for him at this point? Maybe, maybe not. Carrasco is out there on the market. That's probably a lot cheaper available via trade. And Pablo Lopez, I think, might be a better fit at this point now with the St. Louis Cardinals. Cardinals really haven't made any additions to that starting rotation. They said they wanted to add somebody. They have 6 starters on their roster right now, 2 of which are going to be free agents after the year. Maybe they trade one of those before the season begins, see if they can recoup some value there if they know they're going to lose one in free agency. But Pablo Lopez, I think, would be a good fit there. Anybody who needs a number 3, 4, 5 type starter would be wise to make a call to the Miami Marlins. Profar played first for us. Yeah, he played first for the Rangers occasionally when he started his career with the Rangers. Could you see the Yankees trading Giancarlo Stanton to save money? Sure, I think they would love to do it, but there's no way a team bites down on that contract. Jurickson knows how to work the count with the best of them. Yes, he does. Remember Ray Davis said top starter, middle of the order bat before the season was over? Yes, but that's coming from the owner, and while I agree they're going to make they already added a top of the rotation starter, absolutely. I think they're looking for a high on-base percentage type of hitter, somebody who can lengthen out that lineup a little bit. I don't think they're looking for the Albert Pujols of this generation. I don't think they're looking for that level of hitter. They don't have the prospect wherewithal to go ahead and make that type of a trade. So you got to kind of piece together what they're trying to do. I think they're looking for a good, young, productive, cost-controlled left fielder. They're looking for a closer. But as far as a middle of the order bat, I think they're not looking for Albert Pujols. I think they're looking for higher on base percentage. That's why I floated the idea multiple times now of Christian Yelich, because they could buy low on him. He's still a high on base percentage guy, top 20 in the league anyway. The biggest issue for Yelich is that he doesn't hit for power anymore. That's his biggest problem, and he's not going to be asked to hit for power with the Rangers. If it starts to come back, then the Rangers really got something. But if they get the Brewers to eat, say, $10 million per year of that deal, saves the Brewers roughly $16 million per year off of that contract that they can use to sign Adames, Burns, or Woodruff. And with all three of them hitting free agency after 2024, they're going to have to save some money somewhere in order to keep those players around. Otherwise, trade them. You can see Dansby Swanson signing this weekend. I could as well, now that his wedding is concluded. Are the Marlins willing to trade a starter? They're willing to trade almost everybody on that roster outside of Sandy Alcantara. Stanton has a no-trade clause. Again, I don't think it matters one way or the other because Stanton's not getting traded anywhere. Marlins might trade Lopez. I think they will trade Lopez. The question is, will they trade two starters off of that starting rotation? I think there's rumors out there that they could be willing to part with a guy like Jesus Luzardo. But for me, Lopez is probably the most available via trade at the moment. Would love the Cardinals to do a straight-up trade for Lopez for Jordan Walker, their top third base prospect with Arenado at third base now blocking him. Not going to happen. Walker's going to be a member of the St. Louis Cardinals. Doesn't matter that he's blocked. He's going to find a place on the Major League roster at some point, whether it's playing in the outfield somewhere. That's why they have some availability of their outfielders. They're not trading Jordan Walker. So Texas wouldn't eat Stanton money to save prospects. Tempting? No, we wouldn't go after Mike Stanton. He's way too much of a strikeout risk, very low on-base percentage guy. The Rangers are looking for high on-base percentage guy, not low. They already have plenty of power in this lineup. Their issue is not home runs. They are looking for production as far as guys getting on base. That's why Christian Yelich and his bad contract is better for the Rangers than a guy like Giancarlo Stanton. But yes, Jordan Walker is completely unavailable. What team in the American League East is better? We'll start at the bottom. Red Sox are going to finish as the number 5 team. I don't care what they do the rest of this offseason, even if they bring in Dansby Swanson. They're still behind all the other teams in the AL East as far as talent. 4, I'm going to probably put the Baltimore Orioles, even though I think they have an outside chance of making the wild card. 3, I think it's picking between, or deciding between hairs as far as the Rays, the Blue Jays, and the Yankees. Yankees, I think, still need to have a little bit more work to do in that bullpen. They're going to blow some games if they keep their bullpen as is. That's why it's still a work in progress. Rays, they've retooled that team a little bit, but they always seem to be right there. I'll probably say the Rays finish as that number 3 team. I think the rotation should be able to hold together enough, the way they use their bullpenning games, etc. I wonder how they adapt to the rule changes. They probably will adapt very differently than what other teams will this year. But I'd say the Blue Jays probably still finish on top. I just think that rotation is going to be able to bounce back effectively. The lineup is still very good, and they have the pieces to go out there and make a big mid-season acquisition to make them stay on top. For the Yankees, until they add a little bit more to that bullpen, until they add a left fielder, until they complete their off-season so far, I still have them probably as the number 2 team. How about Gorman? Is he more realistic? No, neither one of them is realistic. Next year I see the Jays, Rays, Yankees on top. Is that correct? I believe that to be the case. Again, just so you guys can kind of see the rankings for me, at least at this point. Blue Jays 1, Yankees 2, Rays 3, Orioles 4, and Red Sox 5. As a Yankees fan, when he struggles, you want to bring your TV every night? Yeah. Well, Stanton, he does have those strikeout issues. He doesn't walk a whole lot. When he does connect with the ball and send it, all the way out of New York, it's a sight to see, don't get me wrong, but those sights are few and far between, especially when he's going through a slump or when Judge isn't there to protect him in that lineup. I think Houston might be a good competition from the Yankees, but if it comes to mano-a-mano pitching duel, but if it comes to gut check when your tie turns in the game, Yankees have to show they can do it, I guess is what you're trying to say, Willard. And I'd agree with that. The Yankees, have been owned by the Astros. They're going to have to show that they can beat them before we can say, hey, they're a better team. I do believe they have a better rotation. I'm not sure they have a better lineup right now, but I do think the Yankees have improved that rotation enough. And whereas the Verlander is no longer with the Astros, I still have questions about that rotation going forward. If they're able to produce, maybe something like that would work. So Corbin Burns and Yelich to Texas, you like? I would love that if I was a Rangers fan. I don't think the Brewers would be willing to give us Burns in that type of a deal. I'm thinking more of a guy like Brandon Woodruff, who probably slides in more as a number 3 in this rotation. But in either case, say the Brewers eat a little bit of that contract, we trade him. Duran, Smith, Dunning, etc. Try to even it out, give them some pieces for the future, much like the Josh Hader trade that allowed them to kind of keep major league pieces on that roster, diversify their money as well. That's something I think could work a lot better for the Brewers. But for me, a trade of Yelich and Woodruff would make more sense for Texas and the Brewers. Would I rather have Burns? Absolutely, but it's going to cost a lot more to do it. It hurts me hearing you say Blue Jays on top, but I understand. Well, again, the Yankees are still a work in progress for me. Once you solve that back into the bullpen and I can see a little bit more of the finished product, then I'll have a lot more faith in what the Yankees have done so far. What rule changes to Major League Baseball? They've had quite a few. They had the pitch clock that they're going to be using. You can have a mandatory of 2 throws over to first base, which is going to have a big impact on run scoring, stolen bases, those kinds of things. That one's going to have some unintended consequences I'm not sure baseball prepared for. That could be one of the rules that's ultimately done away with. We could ultimately see the robo-umps in the next couple of years as well. Stanton in the playoffs is definitely clutch compared to Judge. Give Judge some time. I mean, playoffs are different for everybody. Barry Bonds was, absolutely clutch in the regular season. The postseason, absolutely not. Fred McGriff was Mr. Steady Eddie in the regular season. Got even better in the postseason, and those are the type of guys that should be Hall of Famers. That's why he got elected to the Hall of Fame. I'm still waiting for the Yankees' big move they said they were going to do. Well, I think Rodon might be the big move that they were referring to. I'm not buying that they got another big piece cooking. Now, they could surprise us all and go out there and make a big trade for a Dansby, or make a signing for Dansby Swanson, or go out there and make a trade for Pablo Lopez. But to me, the Lopez trade isn't big, and I don't think they're going to be in there for Dansby Swanson, and I don't think he's that big of an addition, especially when you consider they have Volpe and a whole bunch of middle infield options already on their roster. That said, they can be knocked down at the last second and show that what they have. Rudy said about Rockets, never underestimate the heart of a champion and not just sign players who don't deliver in the playoffs. Rudy Tomjanovich, a Rudy T quote there. I like it, Willard. Rodon has a 2.32 ERA against the Astros in 6 starts, so it's much better. Well, again, remember his ERA, park adjusted anyway, fielding independent pitching as well. Also work in Rodon's favor to say that the Giants' defense kind of gave up more and more hits and more runs for him. That's why his numbers at a 2.85 ERA were still great, but could have been even better with a better defense behind him. I think Rodon's going to have a better defense behind him in New York, and his numbers should still be very comparable to what he's done. But again, New York is different for every player. Remember, Sonny Gray was great in Oakland, got the trade to New York, fell apart, goes to Cincinnati, picks right back up where he left off in Oakland, goes on to the Minnesota Twins. Sometimes New York just eats people up. In my opinion, I don't care how much money the Yankees spend. They are not going to win a World Series with a manager like Aaron Boone. I'm not sure Aaron Boone is the problem there in New York. I do wonder if they've built the right team for what Aaron Boone wants to do with that roster. I think they've basically backed him into a corner with a lot of players only play one position. They need a player like a Jurickson Profar who can come in there and play multiple spots, play all over the diamond. Remember how he used Marwin Gonzalez last year? If they had a better version of that, I think they would have used him even more so. But they need some flexibility. They need somebody to get on base. That's why they're looking for an outfielder that can get on base in front of those big hitters in front of Judge and Stanton and Rizzo. But they need somebody to be able to do that, and that would be one thing that could really improve their offense overall. You get a DeGrom jersey? I did not. I do not have a Rangers jersey as of yet. The only jersey I have was one my sister actually made for me because she did t-shirt printing for a while. And she made me a Mitch Moreland jersey back when he was my favorite player on the team. And kind of curious how his career kind of went by the wayside after he left the Rangers. Red Sox for a couple of years, spent some time with Oakland. Padres, I believe, had him for a minute. He was a great hitter, and I really enjoyed watching him play. But that was right at the tail end of the Rangers trying to be competitive. They let him go to kind of sink down even more so in the standings so they could get better draft picks. Appreciate you guys joining us tonight. In case you guys haven't heard from us before anyway, we are going to be ending our dailies that we're doing with you guys and switching to a weekly format for these updates, especially with the majority of the offseason signings already happening. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to skip all the other news that happens. We're going to still bring you immediate updates if something does go down. So say we see a big trade like Pablo Lopez happen, or the Rangers bring in a left fielder, or a trade for a closer, or we see Dansby Swanson sign, or Eovaldi sign. We're still going to do some lives for you guys and bring you all that type of content still. We're just going to go to more of a weekly format for our updates for you as well. Bunting will be brought back, I believe, a little bit. There were teams that were willing to bunt, like the Cleveland Guardians, that used it as a weapon. I think that's something that could come back into baseball, especially with the shift now going away. Have to stay a little bit more honest in your defensive strategies. One other thing I think we're not anticipating is what we're going to see in the outfield. Now, it says you must have two people on the dirt on the infield at all times, but when the pitch is delivered. Now, doesn't mean that you're not allowed to have three on one side and two on the other, and say take one of your outfielders, plug him in there in between second and first base anyway, and say, hey, we're going to shade him right there and only go with a two outfield alignment back there. There's nothing in the rule book that says they can't do that, so we'll see how things go. But they're going to have some changes that we're not going to see coming, and I think we might see something like that next season. We're going to see some very interesting strategies played out. And it's going to take probably a month or two until these managers get a grasp on how this is exactly going to work. And remember, that two throws over to first base as far as a pickoff thing is certainly going to improve some stolen base numbers this year. So expect some big numbers as far as stolen base leaders. Think of Trey Turner, how he's very fast on the base paths, steals bases with ease. He's going to have so much easier of a time stealing bases. He could have, 60 stolen bases? That's an absurd number, but he might get that high based off the rule changes themselves. So be careful what you wish for, baseball. You might have some unintended consequences. But thank you guys for joining us. We've been on here for about an hour now. If you haven't hit that like button already, please do so. It really does help us out. Thank you very much. We really do appreciate that. And if you haven't hit that subscribe button already, please do. We'd love to have you join our community. In case you guys are new here, we cover Major League Baseball, the NBA, the NFL, and the NHL. And we'd love to have you a part of us here at the Upside. But thank you guys for watching here tonight. We'll go ahead and sign off here in just a few minutes. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to send them to us in the comments or on any of the other videos that we post. Feel free to comment to us there. We do get those comments. We try to respond to you out there, and if we don't, we'll do so in a live. So pay attention when we do go live. We'll be sure to send it out there on Twitter as well. I know YouTube sometimes doesn't let you know until the day after, as for some reason, as far as notifications. So make sure you follow us on Twitter at UpsideSN. We also have a Facebook page, Upside Sports Network, as well. You can check out our video collection there as well. We have a TikTok. We'll start posting there as well. But we really appreciate all the support we've gained over the past month or so. We've really gained a lot of you new subscribers since then. And we've been doing this for the better part of a year now. And for those of you who've been with us for a considerably longer time, thank you so much for making this work. I think just like Justin, when everybody thought his career was done, when he got traded to Houston in 2017, now the Astros signing, in my opinion, a huge sleeper with perhaps a chip on his shoulder. Okay. Will the Capitals make the playoffs? Good question. I think Ovi's not going to be denied a playoff run again. I think that team still has too many good pieces to be able to get it done. Do you think Brian Reynolds gets traded? Eventually, yes, I do. Could it be before spring training? I think that's when it should happen. Do I think the Pirates will hold on to him until opening day or even until the trade deadline? I think there's an outside chance of that being true, but I think he will be traded one way or another by this time next year at the very latest. Prove that he's good and what people think. Yeah, but Justin Verlander, he had a great year last year, won the Cy Young, goes to New York Mets, gets a 2-year, $43.3 million average annual value, $86.6 million total, and a great contract for him, but he's 1 year removed from coming back from injury, etc., and he is 39 years old. By the end of that contract, he'll be 41. Will he be able to stay healthy? Max Scherzer also has those issues as far as health concerns. His arm got tired, had a dead arm anyway in the postseason 2 years ago. Last year got blown up in the playoffs against the Padres. There was some video anyway, if you look back at the series against the Padres in the wild card round a couple of months ago, when he's in the bullpen warming up before the game, it looks like he might have injured something, just the way he reacted while he was trying to warm up. And then he got blown up for 7 runs in that game, more runs than he had given up in any game so far this year. or so far last year anyway, and we'll see if Max Scherzer is just starting to wear down as he gets older. I mean, he's thrown a lot of innings in his career. Not everybody has a million throws or a million pitches in their arm, and maybe Scherzer's starting to get to that point as the year wanes on. You're talking about their new first baseman, Jose Abreu. I don't think there's any real injury issues for Jose Abreu for me. I think he's a pure hitter. He was fourth in the major leagues with hits last year with 187. Basically, it's the new Michael Brantley for the Astros. That's why I think Michael Brantley is kind of a fallback option for them should they be unable to bring in a different, more athletic left fielder like a Michael Conforto, something like that. Although, if I'm the Rangers, I still would rather have the better hitter in Michael Brantley. But thank you guys for joining us again. Really appreciate all the support we've gained. Again, we'll be live for you guys Monday evening at about 8:30, 9 o'clock Central Time. So be sure to set your reminders. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at UpsideSN. And thank you guys so much for making this so much fun. We appreciate all the support we've gained, and y'all have a great evening, all right?